Ladies, honored to guest now Professor Chani. Professor Stella Chani is an associate professor at the Department of Economics, National and Kapodistrian University of Athens, Greece. In economics and business from the University of Reading, UK. She's one of the 39 new members, first in Greece, selected on the grounds of the excellent scientific research and the demonstrated societal engagement to join the Global Young Academy in June 2022 for a tenure of 5 years. She's invited expert member of the Foresight Group, coordinated by Plan Blue on the Mediterranean Basin Med 2050 project. She's an expert member of the body of knowledge as well as a startup mentor and trainer for the Cross KIC initiative, finding innovative solutions for water scarcity in Southern Europe. She's a scientific coordinator of the project Energy Governance for Sustainable Development, funded by the EEA grants, and Structural Capacities for Tackling Weak Problems, Erasmus+. She's the lead editor on Economics of Natural Resources. She acts as an invited scientific advisory board member in the START 2030 project, funded by the Austrian Institute of Economic Research, and in the Life Beware project. Stella is representative at the Euro-Mediterranean Forum of Institutes of Economics. She has acted as expert proposal evaluator for the French National Research Agency and reviewer for the IPCC Special Report on the Ocean and Cryosphere in a Changing Climate. She has more than 10 years of professional experience with multisectoral networks across the knowledge triangle and has participated in more than 35 projects funded by national and international bodies. Her work applies economic methods and tools to address related to sustainable development, public policy assessment, sovereign wealth management, with focus on renewables, hydrocarbons and water, energy, food ecosystems nexus, institutions, labor markets, technology innovation, economy energy, and environmental modeling and scenario analysis. Her publications appear in leading economics peer-reviewed journals, Economic Letters, Economic Modeling, Energy Economics, Environmental Science and Policy, Business Economic System, Research Policy, etc., and in edited volumes. Public dialogue and with publication in the media and with participation in public dissemination events. Professor Chani, we're pleased to tell you that the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Very happy to be with you, despite being in a remote manner. Hopefully you had a very nice experience so far with the Kavala Summer School. The program is really impressive with lots of expertises and different disciplines, trying to bring as much as possible in this topic. Good afternoon from rainy Athens. Quite a lot of water pouring down, and just reminding us once again the challenges that we have to face when it comes to climate change, to infrastructure upgrade and transformation in order to deal with the new conditions. And of course, reminding us that water is something that comes from nature, but if not properly managed, even when it comes in big chunks, cannot be enough or cannot be considered as a safe and secure and easy to access resource in the future. When I was preparing this presentation, having a look at the other presenters and the other participants in the program, I was thinking what I can bring in a very swift manner to the participants of this summer school. Being my economist myself with a sweet tooth for resource economics, I decided to focus on what is called an economic value of water and how that enters into policies and policy making that has to do with management of water as a common resource, but also to link this to business-related developments and to financing-related developments, because water is not just a resource, it's also a common resource, a resource that enters into the production system and in the production chain of businesses. At the same time, water is something that is used by households, and at the same time is also a resource that provides vital services to the environment. So too many challenges to address with regards to how do we manage this water and what does it mean in the future to have water scarcity as a constant problem for businesses. Now, usually these kind of business challenges are overcome in the modern economic systems with innovation. Okay, we innovate, we come up with new technologies, and these new technologies provide solutions to complex common problems. This kind of innovation, we see it's taking place in the case of water management as well. Yet, this innovation comes to address not only business or financial issues that are related to how much we pay for water availability, but also is related to sustainability issues. So it has to do with environmental sustainability, social sustainability, business sustainability. And usually these kind of implications are not fully incorporated in the market price we see for water or for the financial instrument that we choose to invest, we choose to put into water-related investments. So I will continue this presentation with a bit of reference to these kind of financial innovations, and of course with reference to the work we did for the European Institute of Innovation and Technology that focused exactly on this, what kind of financial instruments we have for water, and how these financial instruments on one side facilitate the access to finance for water innovation, but on the other side also address business issues and social issues that have to do with water availability. So a brief of outline. We start by looking at the wider picture that has to do with the economics of water, the economics and politics of water. Then we will continue with a bit of business implications and innovations that are related to addressing water scarcity, water quality, and water availability. Then we will discuss a bit the energy, water, food, environment nexus, so how does the water enters into these complex relationships between different sections of the economy and between different stakeholders. And then we will conclude the discussion with a brief reference to the technological innovations, to technological alternatives, but also financial alternatives that address current and future water issues. And of course, when we talk about water, behavioral aspects like how do we understand the value of water, or how do we change our lifestyles in order to address water scarcity or water quality issues are vital. So I would like to close this presentation with a brief reference to what does it mean to engage and what does it mean to change the behavior when it comes to water use and water availability. Now, starting with, as I said, the wider image and looking at the policies at global and at regional level, we have two flagship initiatives. The one is the United Nations Agenda to 2030 that has brought forward the 17 SDGs, the 17 Sustainable Development Targets, that target environmental, social, economic, and cooperation issues at global but also at regional level. 2 out of these 17 SDGs are directly linked to water. SDG number 6 refers to clean water and sanitation, while SDG number 14 relates to life below water. Both of these have to do with the quality and the availability of water and the ability of water resources to cater for the environment, the societies, and the economies. So at the global level, it becomes of primary importance, and it has already risen up in the global agenda, the importance to address in a timely manner issues that are related to water. And these issues have to do with the availability, with the quality, with the management of shared resources. So it's not just the economy, it's not just the society, it's also the cooperation, transnational, transboundary cooperation that has to do with water management that is addressed, is highlighted in this kind of SDGs. At European level, we have a flagship initiative, a flagship directive, the Water Framework Directive, that develops in cycles. The first cycle ended in 2015, the second ran until 2021, and now we run the third cycle, the third management cycle that ends in 2027. The directive has several dimensions: economic, technological, social, and all of them look for the first time in an integrated manner to how do we manage water. So the Water Framework Directive is the first integrated policy approach at EU level on how to manage common resources that are scarce and are vulnerable to qualitative and quantitative changes. What is very significant and for a first time component in the Water Framework Directive, component of EU directive, is the explicit reference to the economic value of water, to the total economic value of water. So among other things that have to do with the quality of the water and the management, the European Water Framework Directive for the first time foresees explicitly the obligation of member states and managers of water resources to look into the total economic cost, total water cost, what is called recovery. So the estimation and the ensuring that we include this total value of water use in all the management decisions that have to do with water. What is this total water cost recovery? Is the cost that comes as a sum of the financial, of the environmental, and the resource cost related to water use. The financial cost has to do with costs that water provider, water companies have mainly to address and to cover, and this has to do with the operation and maintenance of the distribution system, the administration costs or investments in infrastructure cost. That is the part of the cost that is most easily quantified and identified and is already included in the cost sheets of the operators and the management companies and the distribution companies of water. What is a real challenge is the estimation and the inclusion in the final price of water that is used by end users, whether it's household or businesses, is the environmental and the resource cost. The first is related to all the environmental externalities, so to all the impacts that are related to water uses that are not included in the final market price. Consider, for instance, an industry that is polluting a nearby river or a nearby lake. If there are no policies in place and tools that make this polluter pay, then this environmental cost that has an impact on the quality and the quantity of the available water is not fully incorporated in the price that this end user pays for the water used. The resource cost, even more difficult to estimate, is related to the opportunity cost, so to the cost of the next best use of the available water resources. Water is not just for drinking, it's not just for industries, it's not just for businesses, it's also a vital resource for other environmental services and goods. It provides households, it provides nutrition, it provides shelter, it provides vital water for other species on Earth. So when we decide to use water in an A manner, whether it's household consumption, whether it's industrial consumption, then we take this availability of water or this right to consume water and to have water-related services from other species or other activities on Earth. So if we want to have a fair, just and accurate allocation of water to different users that is based on the water price, then we also need to calculate this resource cost and to include it in the final price that users pay. Anyway, to summarize the core of this slide is that now, for the first time in Europe, we have a policy that makes explicit consideration for an integrated management of water resources, a management that explicitly includes not just the financial, but also the environmental and the resource cost of water use. Now, what does this mean in practice? In practice, it means that we as users may not be paying the right price for water. Okay, it may be the case that the prices that we see in our bi-monthly water bills or monthly water bills represent just the financial cost of the water distributor. So we may lack in large the resource or the environmental cost of water use. To some extent, this cost has been incorporated due to directives and to requirements that come from European level policies. But this is not always the case. We have regions, we have countries in the European Union, we have users in the European Union, even in Greece, that do not pay yet in full this total cost of water. So the question here is why? Well, the first thing has to do with the practicalities of estimating total cost of water use. It's not that easy to say, so who can tell for sure how much is the resource or the environmental cost of water? What is more important is how do we allocate this cost between different users? So how do we know who should pay and what amount should pay for polluting the river, if we know that in this river, for instance, there are several industries that throw their byproducts from their activities. A third point has to do with who has the right to use water. Is water, in the end of the day, a common good, a non-private public good, is an environmental good, or is it an economic good? Economic good means that the market instruments and the market powers of demand and supply are good enough to establish, to end up with a reasonable, fair, efficient price for water. Okay, but how valid is this case if we consider water as a common good or as an environmental good that is given for free, is easily accessible, and especially if you consider, for instance, indigenous communities that have been close to these water resources and use them for a long time? How can you tell them now to pay a right or a fair price for water? On top of everything else, we are also talking about a vital good for survival, but also for social good, because it's an absolute necessity for human survival. So we cannot really say that whoever does not pay cannot have access to water resources. Okay, so these kind of characteristics of water that make it not purely an economic good, but also not purely a public good, add to the challenges of finding a fair, efficient price for water. Now, as I said, if we had efficient markets, we should not be worrying about the price of water and whether this price incorporates also the environmental or the resource costs. But what we see in the case of water is that market mechanisms alone are not enough so as to allocate the costs and the benefits between users. Okay, the markets for water are not perfect, and that means that we have a lot of externalities, or we have a lot of information that is related to the environmental or to the resource cost that is not included in the price that would result from the interaction of demand and supply alone. Okay, so we can tell for sure that in the case of water, the market mechanism alone is not enough so as to end up with efficient allocation and efficient water prices. What can we do? Here is to step up and look at the policies and look at the scientific community that give us all this essential information that has to do with the environmental and resource cost of water. That is one thing. And the second is to come up with all those economic instruments and policy instruments that can incorporate these externalities or these costs to the final price of water. What are these instruments? This could be, for instance, pollution taxes, or could be a pricing system for water that comes in volume, so whoever consumes more pays more, or whoever consumes water for non-essential purposes, think, for instance, having water-related facilities or not, or whoever makes excess use of water or does not reduce consumption would pay more. And by reducing consumption, I mean investing in technologies or in water-saving systems. Now, what is, or relating at least this subject of inefficient markets and the need for policy intervention in the management of resources like water. The next key question is, what would be the implication for businesses? So what does it mean to have water, to have enough water, and what does it mean for businesses to have policies that intervene in water management and policies that shape the final market price of water? I'm focusing more on businesses because these are quite related also to economic development that we see in regions. Usually what we say is that wherever we have business operations, we have also employment opportunities, we have innovation opportunities, so it's quite essential to see how the cost of water availability relates to business operations and to the extensions, to the implications that these business operations will have to the communities and the societies in which they operate. Availability of water and cost of water, of course, is essential for household consumption as well, okay? But in this case, it's much more straightforward, the implication, because in the end of the day, if you have higher prices for water, it means that you will have lower availability or access to water, or inequalities in access to water. In the case of business access to water, the implications are much further because they also have to do with the employment, the well-being, the social impact, and the environmental and resource impact of business activities related to water use. So consider the case where we have a policy intervention that is trying to address water scarcity. In this case, we are talking about either taxes on excess use, or we are talking about incentives to modernize all the infrastructure that is related to water consumption. So put it simply, how much water is used in a business. If we have policy-driven interventions that say that businesses need to lower the consumption of water, then basically what we're saying them is that they need to consider an extra cost that has to do with water use. So they have to do whatever it takes, innovation, upgrade of their infrastructure, so as to consume less water. On one side, this is considered an extra cost for the businesses because they have to invest in new technologies. But if you think more carefully, this is an overtime benefit for the companies because they are lowering their environmental impact, so they are lowering the future requirements in payments that are related to environmental degradation or to competing for a resource that is in scarcity, and that is water. And the second is the potential competitive advantage that these businesses can have over other competitors in other parts of the world. Think, for instance, that if we have EU or Greek businesses operating, producing with lower water consumption, that means also at the same time lower water costs in their bills. So lower cost of production as compared to other competitors, they may not have introduced such innovations. Of course, the introduction of innovation requires some kind of upfront investment capital, and here is where it emerges the need to identify available capital to be invested in water-related activities, and of course, the consideration of what kind of impact this upfront investment would have on the cost of production of the companies. Another important factor has to do with the environmental implications of business operations. So how these operations interact with the local communities and the local society. Companies and businesses that can manage to operate and coexist with other users of water without putting too much pressure on water resources can coexist in a harmonious way with other stakeholders and other water users. While businesses that continue on exactly the same water excessive use path may find themselves sooner or later in a competitive position versus other users of water. And put it simply, this can create tensions or even significant problems for the operation of businesses in specific parts of the world. Think, for instance, extraction of minerals in parts where water is scarce, or think heavy water consuming industries in parts where again water is in scarcity or water quality is the end requirement. Now, coming back to policies and coming back to interventions at the business and household level that has to do with water use. We need to consider water within a larger prism, and this prism should have three different points: the water, the energy, and the food production. Now we are in a period where when we see that economies and societies are trying to undertake a huge sustainability let's call it transition first step. So we are transiting from one method of production to another method of production that is more sustainable or can be more resource saving. At the same time, we have a transition in consumption patterns. Okay. Most important in this transition most important change is related to how energy and how food is produced, and in these production systems, how vital resources like water enter. Consider, for instance, the energy transition that we are undergoing now. There's a lot of debate that we need to move away from conventional energy sources to renewable energy sources. These renewable energy sources, some of them come with heavy water requirements. For instance, if you consider nuclear energy that needs water for cooling, or if you consider solar panels that require rare earths or minerals that are very water intensive in their extraction activity. So they solve the problem of having energy with less CO2 emissions, but at the same time they put huge pressure on the global water resource availability. So one question is, how do we make this transition happen? How do we make the sustainability energy transition happen, while at the same time we consider water availability and safe water access? The answer seems to be in technological innovation. So what kind of technologies we can come up with that minimum water use in the existing operations, and at the same time they can promote activities and processes like water recycling or water reuse or technology production related to energy that comes with lower water usage. So innovation is the key, but in order to have innovation, you need first of all to consider what kind of innovation can be related to water, and another thing is to consider what kind of financial instruments you need or you need to develop in order to have in order to back up financially this water-related innovation. As regards the technological readiness and the technological advancements that seem to play a part in water management, we can say that the community, the scientific community, the innovation community, the technological development community has a lot of solutions to offer. And these solutions have to do with automatization, have to do with digitalization, have to do with remote monitoring and sensing, have to do with models of production. So basically we have a lot of technological innovations that in one way or another can help us can help the economies, regional, global, can help the societies to lower their impact on water use and the availability of good quality of water. We have this kind of technological innovations. We have solutions. Some of them are at the early development stage, while others are very well developed and have already entered the market. What it seems to be problematic here is, first of all, the availability, the possibility of these innovations to reach the market, and the access that different innovation solutions can have to vital investment capital that will enable them to grow outside of the laboratory or to grow outside of the experimental level. In a study, in a project that we did for the EIT, for the European Institution of Innovation and Technology, we examined exactly all these different innovative solutions that could be used for efficient water management. And we also examined all the different financial tools, the existing ones, but also the novel ones that can facilitate the financing of innovative solutions to water management. And what we found is that we have a lot of available capital and we have a lot of different financing alternatives that could be directly related to water management. I have included here a link. I urge you to read this paper because it's very interesting, not just for the water sector itself. It is related to any kind of innovation that has to do with the management of natural resources, and basically it indicates the different financing tools that at different stages of the innovation can best support the technological upgrade and also the prospect of these innovative technologies to enter the market. And what is more important that we found here is that not for business angels, but a lot of these that have innovative ideas that have to do with water management it's now a good time for them to seek these funding alternatives and to see how they can bring their ideas to the market, because there is and there will be increasing need for these innovations and these water solutions in the future, because we have climate change, we have resource scarcity, we have water scarcity, we have these pressing issues that we need to address here and now. So any kind of innovation is sought after, and it will be assessed as a way to solve common problems. To conclude this and to open the floor for discussion, consider the last bit of it, and that has to do with behavioral changes and our own engagement to the bigger problem and to the bigger picture. We have policies in place, we have business implications, we have implications for consumers that are related to these policies. For instance, if you tax water or if you make water less available, it will have direct implications for households and businesses as well. But if we don't take any measures, if we have no policies in place, sooner or later we will find ourselves ahead of a big problem, and that problem is water scarcity. Greece in particular, and the Mediterranean region and Southeast Europe in general is expected to be most affected by water scarcity in Europe. So it's a problem that is already becoming pressing, but it will be even more pressing in the near years to come. So now we have two options: either to continue on the same path or to take now measures that have to do, first of all, with investment support that has to do with water management, and second, behavioral changes that can ensure efficient water use here and now. Behavioral changes is that we can be more open to the idea of drinking recycled water or reused water, or to be more open in the idea that if we pollute or if we make excessive use of water, we have to pay more, or to be more ready and more open to the idea that the resource or the environmental cost of water use sooner or later has to be included in the market price, and we as end users have to pay for them. Now, these kind of acceptances entail that we understand well the problem, and we are ready to do this, to take this kind of behavioral changes, and to remove basically all these sludge, how is it called in the literature, or this information asymmetry that exists between providers of solutions or provider of waters, scientists that work with water management issues, and users. So the key questions for all of us is, are we ready? Do we really understand the implications of water scarcity? Do we really understand the implications of managing water in a wise manner first? And do we understand that these implications will come in a few years from now? In some cases, we can see them even now. Or we consider that these changes are something that do not impact our generation and have we have no reason to be concerned because it's something that our generation will not face. And the third, and to frankly answer to ourselves, is, are we ready to undertake these behavioral changes? The short answer here should be that yes, we should be ready to take these behavioral changes, because it's a matter of survival, and it's also a matter of efficient resource use. But on the other hand, the very nature of water, that is an economic and a public good at the same time, makes all these answers and makes these behavioral changes quite difficult when it comes to water. Now, to close this presentation with reference to economics, from my discipline, what I can say is that economists have been able to develop methodological approaches to how we estimate the environmental and the resource cost of water, and we also have come up with a set of alternatives on how water can be priced or how water can be used in an efficient manner, in a manner that includes not just the economic costs and benefits and the financial costs and benefits, but also the environmental and resource costs. And at the same time, we have come up with a set of solutions and proposals on what kind of innovative financial tools can be made available so as to support innovation in the water sector. The problem, or if you prefer, what is left ahead of us is to incorporate all these different methodologies and to incorporate all these different solutions into policy making. But policy making often comes with a very short-term horizon. Policymakers, in the end of the day, are interested to being re-elected, so they may put priority in solving short-term issues rather than looking at longer-term problems, such as intergenerational efficient resource management. So here is where we need stakeholders that are well informed and stakeholders that understand the problems and stakeholders that put pressure for scientifically driven solutions to water management in particular and resource management in general. So solutions are there, read them, be concerned, be interested, and be active. And with this, I thank you for your attention, and I think we have some time for questions. If you have any questions, I would be more than happy to answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Chani. I will now ask our participants if they do have any questions. Yes, we have Dr. Mavrikou. She has a question, and I will pass her the microphone.
Thank you.
Hello, thank you so much for your comments and your presentation. I think the answers to your question are no, no, and no. I was at the United Nations in August at a Sustainable Development Goal meeting, and I happened to sit with the African delegation. And one of the things they spoke about when we got to the question about clean water and its availability is that the Western world is not understanding that the developing world is not capable of providing clean water on its own, and that if we rely on businesses, businesses are interested in making money. Going to provide the type of support that people in the developing world need unless it's for them. So one of the really big issues that came up at the Sustainable Development meeting was that the Western world, no, doesn't understand the problem, 2, is not finding effective solutions, 3, is not willing to change its behavior, and 4, on business as the main provider of initiatives and funds, then it's not going to happen. They feel isolated. They feel that nobody's talking to them. They feel that nobody on big issues about trying to find ways to get clean water, that will be the next big reason for conflict.
Yes.
So I was wondering how you feel about that.
I share your concerns to start with. Thank you for the comments. We have the annual UN SDG Summit coming in the end of the month, on the 18th and the 19th. And if you have followed the discussion, there is a new mini agenda with targets that are set as priorities for 2030. We're midway there and we don't see any meaningful progress. So water, I think, will be included as a core express or mini target, call it as you wish, for 2030. And it's true that when it comes to resource availability and access, the developing part of the world is in a less favored position. I wouldn't say that the Western world does not recognize this, because I am in the Western part and we keep shouting and screaming and writing about these issues and saying that we should consider the North-South divide, we should consider the developing divide, and with the last economic report on the economics, in the global economics of water, it was recognized by the United Nations as well that water is a global common resource. So it doesn't really matter it doesn't make any sense to talk about regional availability unless we solve the global problem. Okay, so I'm not sure that, at least in the scientific world, is not very well understood that this is a global challenge. Some parts of the world are affected more than others, and we need to address this issue in Europe or in any other developing part of the world, considering the developing regions. Okay, the question is how much this is transmitted and is impacting policy making in the developing part of the world. I think in that regard we are lucky because we live in Europe. Europe has been very proactive in water management. Europe has been, with its policies, very proactive when it comes to transboundary river management as well, and water management in general. So we show some steps of progress, not yet where we would like to be, but still it's very clear, it has become very clear to the policymaking at the European level that water management and issues that are related to water are transboundary, are not regional, are global. And we are trying, the same as with energy transition, European policymaking is trying to stand at the forefront of actions that have to do with efficient water management. I agree that we are not, and I agree as a scientist, but also as a community member, that we are not where ideally we would like to be. Having said that, a lot of innovation takes place in the developed part of the world. So it's a challenge for us now to export, not for economic profit, but for resource availability for the globe and for resource efficiency for the globe, these innovations that are related to water access, to water availability and water quality. Solutions are there, the money are there, the developing part of the world offers great investment opportunities because there is where we will have the highest returns also, because there is where resources are most in need. And I'm not saying that they will pay a high price for water and this is how businesses will make money. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying that the water saving that can be achieved in these parts of the world, or the water availability that can be achieved in these parts of the world, that will have effects on resource-related migration, will be beneficial, will be win-win, will leave resources, including financial resources, to both the developing and the developed part of the world. So I would like to comment, to close this answer and comment, looking rather at the positive, at the bright side of the things. Not saying that nothing can be done or some parts of the world are doomed, but it's a matter of how fast this action will take place and into what direction.
Any other questions? Okay. Ambassador Theodore, please.
Good afternoon, Professor. Thank you very much for being with us, accepting the invitation. 2 questions. First of all, a very short statement. I remember from the years I studied economics that water is a free good, which gradually has been converted into a marketable commodity. My first question. The capital invested by the investors is proportional to the economic result they expected? And the second question is the following. At the end of the day, do investors return to the society a rational percentage of their profits, compensating people for their social consent in accepting the transformation of a free good to a stock market product?
Thank you. A very interesting comment. I try to make this clear to my presentation with regards to the nature of water as a good. It's not an economic good, it's not a private good, it's not purely a public good. It has characteristics of both goods. Having said that, that means that someone can use water resources and not allowing access to other people. Okay, that, put it simply, describe it in very simple terms, makes it a private good. At the same time, if someone is close to a water resource, can use it, while at the same time can other users use it also. So that makes it public good. I'm not going into the economic definitions of what is public or what is private, what is the cost of one additional user, etc. So indeed, we're talking about a good that cannot be a purely market good, and any attempt to turn water into a commodity, in my view, should not be accepted. We have, in these market mechanisms, we have some tools that send good signals with regards to the cost or the benefit of water use, okay? So whoever needs it the most or whoever uses it the most, think for instance an industry that is a heavy water user should pay more for every gallon that it uses in excess. At the same time, people have a right from birth to get access to water, so it should not be a commodity. Okay. Now, so in that regard, I'm making it clear that non-commodification of water should be at the core of every policy and at the core of every decision that has to do with water management. Okay. Now, with regards to the second, you refer to investors. I assume you refer to investors that invest in the water sector or invest in water as commodity. I'm not going to the second one, so I'm not discussing about those that trade on water rights on secondary markets. That's out of the question. I'm focusing much more on the primary users of water, and I'm considering only the case of those that invest in the infrastructure to provide water. Now, it's very easy to estimate these costs, or these infrastructure costs. So logically, in the water bills that we pay, these costs of infrastructure are included and are paid for. Whether they make money or not, it's a matter also of policies. Think that in many cases, water is a monopoly. Water provision is monopoly in many European countries, in Greece as well. In other parts, is not a monopoly. It has been fully privatized, and we've seen the results there. So when we have monopolies and when we have policies that directly translate to final water prices, we may have the case where the price is not enough so as to cover the cost of water provision. But that would be for other reasons, for social access to water for everyone, or for political reasons. It would not be for economic reasons, because in the end of the day, if someone has an infrastructure, a system to maintain or to take care for, somehow needs to find the money to do so. Okay, so in the cases where these investors, these providers do not make profit, it's a matter of policy decision not to do so. In cases where they make profits, I can say that it's very possible for someone that manages a scarce resource, or someone that may manage a natural monopoly, like it's the provision of water, to make profits and to make high economic profits, okay, monopolistic profits. And then again is the case of policymakers and policy intervention. So how do we intervene, and how do we make sure that this monopolist is not making excessive use of the monopoly power that it has? Okay, so water is a sensitive good. If we all agree that it should not be a commodity, then there is always room for policy intervention and control of what is done in the water sector, who invests, why it invests for, and what kind of profits it makes. I think that for now, the market lacks those mechanisms that would enable the market forces of demand and supply alone to end up with an efficient allocation of water resources. So for now, with this system that we have, some kind of intervention when it comes to water is necessary, or at least the creation of a market of rights. For instance, who has the right to use the common resource. These have been tried in other parts of the world, not with great success. It's something like the CO2 emission, the emission trading system, but still is something that is much closer to the market forms rather than having direct state intervention in water management.
May I ask you one small term explanation? I intentionally used the word good. You are insisting on commodities. Could you explain us why do you use this expression in your economic presentation?
Okay. I would say that the word that I would like to use more for water is not commodity, it's resource. In my slides and in my presentation, I refer to water as a resource in scarcity. It's not a commodity. It's not something that can be traded, and that trade can lead to efficient allocation. It is a good, it is a common good, it is an environmental good, it's something that nature provides us with. So good is also something that we can use as a term. So if I had to rank the terms to use for water, I would go first for resource, to make clear that it's something that nature gives us for free, and that does not come in indefinite amounts. It can be scarce, okay? Second, it's a good that is provided by nature, and this good has specific environmental services. So it's not something that only people can consume, but is also something that provides, caters for other ecosystems and for other activities on Earth. And the last word that I would use is commodity when we refer to market-driven mechanisms that determine the price of water. So if we let water use and water distribution to market forces alone, I'm not saying production, then it could be considered as a commodity, as something that the value of which, or the final allocation, is the result of demand and supply interactions. But I insist on saying that we should make very explicit that non-commodification of water should be a priority for policy making.
Thank you very much, Professor.
Since we don't have any other questions, Professor Tzani, I want to thank you very much for your inspired and enlightening lecture, as well as the answers given. I believe that all of our participants are comforted to know that and to learn from you today that there is a meticulous job done globally and institutions for these vital issues of water management in a way to tackle with future challenges and the scarce issues and vital good water. We were also privileged to be informed on the business implication of water scarcity, the important issue of the energy, water and energy food nexus, on the technology readiness and available solutions, the financing tool, as well as on the and the necessary. We thank you once again for accepting to participate in the National Summer School. Thank you very much, Professor Tzani.
Thank you. The pleasure was all mine. I wish you the best of luck for the remaining school. And if any other comments or questions, I would be more than happy to continue offline. So best of luck with the rest of the school. Thank you very much.
Thank you.